What if you could take that risk, make that change, reach that goal, live your best life? Welcome to another episode of the What If You Could podcast, where we get together with amazing experts and everyday people who share challenges, encourage healing, and explore the possibilities that life has to offer. I'm your host, Gary Scott, and I'm excited that you're along for the ride. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of What If You Could. And with me is the lovely, sparkling, effervescent Blake Lefkoe. And we're going to wrap this up because she's got to go windsurfing and we want to knock this out. So she's anxious to get in the surf. So thank you so much for giving us this time, Blake. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thanks so much for having me on.
Right on. Well, we're gonna have some fun. I'm just gonna read your bio real quick,
Okay,
and then we're just gonna jump in.
sounds great.
Cool, cool, cool. Blake Lefkoe. Today, we have a special guest who is dedicated to helping people transform their lives by breaking free from the beliefs that hold them back. Blake Lefkoe is a facilitator of the Lefkoe Method, a powerful process developed by her late father that helps people eliminate limiting beliefs that keep people stuck in the unwanted emotional and behavioral patterns. After going on her own transformative journey, overcoming addiction, and rediscovering the method, she's now passionate about guiding others to live healthier, happier lives aligned with their true passions and values, from helping clients break unhealthy patterns to creating a life of fulfillment for herself. Blake is here to share her wisdom on living authentically and with purpose. That rocks. That's all good stuff. Oh, by the way, before we start, listen, anybody named Morty is my guy, all right? I love the name Morty. So your
Amazing.
dad, I would have loved your dad.
Oh my gosh, he was the most lovable man. Everybody loved him. He was
Well, I
beautiful.
had an Uncle Morty growing up,
Oh,
and Uncle Morty was the best. I think he was the only one in the family who actually liked me. That's good. So welcome and thank you so much. I mean, you've done a lot. You've put a lot here. Um, I think we've all rebelled and run away at some point in our life.
sure.
Um, why did you go and how did you end up coming back?
So I went, I think just the reason that most kids kind of go, right? Your parents are like, we do this, and this is the conversation, and this is what we do, and this is what's in the house, and this is life. I was like, no. And kind of it started as well, I just want to have fun and kind of turned into like, you know, partying and then drinking and drugs and traveling and boys and this and that. And there was a hedonistic, very fun piece to it. But then there was a very uh big piece of darkness and suppression and like I don't want to look at my stuff and I don't want to feel things and I don't want to deal with things and I don't want to. And so that just became this, I'm trying to think of a better word, but yeah, just suppressing, right? And at some point, that darkness grew and affected my life in a lot of negative ways. And when I had an amazing life, I've traveled, I've done so much, but there was a sense of unfulfillment. And at some point, it became unsustainable. And the people I was attracting were not healthy. And the relationships I was in were not healthy. And the way I was treating myself was not healthy. And the kind of role model I was being for my child was not healthy. And I wasn't making good choices because all the choices were in the moment. This feels good now. And like you can't live a sustainable life like that. Um, and especially when you don't want to look at your stuff and you're constantly doing things to not do that. So even healthy choices, right? The person that's like, eat super clean and they go to yoga 8 hours a day, but it's still just an escape. It's like this spiritual bypass, right? I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to continue to not look at my stuff and work on my stuff, but it's healthy. You're like, well, it's healthier than the alternative, but still not.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I basically woke up in my late 30s. I was a single mom. I was just out of a relationship that was just like it wasn't healthy and the person wasn't healthy and it just went on for too long and I was brokenhearted and I had thrown my back out and I was out of the water and that was like another coping mechanism. It had been Halloween, I'd been bartending, I'd been partying, I was just like off this bender and I just woke up and I was like, what? Like, how did I get here? Like this, no, this is
That's
not.
not who I am. What the hell is going
Yeah,
on?
yeah, and sometimes like, and it for me, it was my rock bottom. Not that that was the rock bottom, but it was this moment that was bad enough where I was like, something's got to give, and I signed up for a plant medicine ceremony, and I got
Wait,
sober to
wait. I signed up for a what?
ayahuasca ceremony, like plant medicine,
Hmm.
and then I started kind of found my way back. I was like, oh, I have this amazing tool that my mom and my dad was passed at this point, unfortunately, but my mom does and my sister does and my aunties do, and like there's all these facilitators in my life that can help me, and I was just so fortunate, and because I found my way back to it organically, I was there because I wanted it and because I was ready for it and not because it was like what I grew up with and was kind of spoon fed. And it was just such a phenomenal shift of starting to eliminate these beliefs that just like across my entire life, like my parenting changed, my drinking, like I got completely sober. I'm over 3 years completely sober. I got out of the restaurant industry after 3 decades. I was able to take the trainings, start my own business. I was able to find balance in my life, right? Where it's like work, family, play, myself, self-care, right? We're like so much of the time it's not balanced. And that's what I'm saying. Even if it's yoga, it's like too much. We're doing these things too much. We can't find this healthy balance of like what feels good for me, what's authentic to me. And really 180ing my life to like the different friendships, the different community I'm in, just how I show up, what shows up for me. Everything is just so different. Like I'm not as defensive anymore. I'm so willing to look at my stuff and work through my stuff. And something comes up and it's uncomfortable. And you're like, oh, okay, like this is hard. This is icky, but like what is there for me to learn here? Like what do I believe that's having this show up, that's having me attract this, that's keeping me stuck here. So it's just this huge perspective shift and just being able to create the life. What if you could do anything because you can't. Like the only thing standing in your way of what if you could is you. And
Yeah.
if you can get out of your own way, and the way that I help people do that is by eliminating the beliefs that keep you limited, right?
Yeah.
Then
What
they're,
do you think though? Do you think that maybe as crazy as all that was and how fun for a little while it was and the madness and all of that, do you think in a little way it's made you better at being what you're being? In other words, if you had hopped in mom and dad's business and jumped in the family business and started doing their stuff, their method, perhaps you wouldn't be as good
no,
as you
no,
are now.
no. And somebody actually asked me, I was on a podcast the other day, and the guy was like, if you could go back in time and give your 18-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be? And I was like, I wouldn't tell her anything. But everything I've done up to now has gotten me to where I'm at now. And I love where I'm at now. So I wouldn't have changed anything. I wouldn't have made any decisions differently. It's like,
Everything you did got you to where you are now.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the process. Sometimes people they start working with me and they're like, oh my God, like I've wasted so much time, or what if I'd found this sooner? And I was like, no, because everything you did got you to be ready for this. Like and now you found it. Like it's better now than never. And if you had it before, then you wouldn't be where you are. Like you needed all that stuff. You needed to go through that to be ready to change, to, for all of it. So
Yeah. How do you you mentioned about identity and finding out who you really are. And after all your trials and tribulations and the addictions and the travel and the craziness, eh, did that help you identify who you are? Did it expose who you are? Or how do
I
you
I have
find
some
who you really are?
interesting thoughts about identity. And I think a lot of people live their lives in a way that they think they're supposed to, right? This is how you should live. This is what your life should look like. And so people do that. And to unlearn that and to go, well, what really feels good for me is one piece, right? That authentic, what do I want my life to look like? What is my balance? What are my passions? What are my values? And how do I live a life consistent with that? Right? That's one piece. The other piece is when we identify with something, as something, we're limiting ourselves. I am a this, right? And you look at, I was creating a workshop on identity, right? And I did this like just a tiny bit of research. And when athletes retire, whether it's from age, injury, whatever, like some astronomical percentage, it's like 75% of them like go into, like what was the word? Like a mental illness of some kind, right? Whether it's like identity crisis or depression or, this thing or that thing, because that's who they are. It's who
Mhm.
they feel like they are. And so when you take that away, they no longer know who they are, right? I am a football player. I am a doctor. And then people retire and they go, well, now I don't know who I am. So it's like, I am somebody that plays football. Like that is my passion. That is my income. That is what I love, but it's not who I am. And when we say that, we just limit ourselves, because if I am this, then it means I'm not that. Right?
And if you're no longer that, you're no longer anything. You're no longer good enough. You've lost your identity. You've lost your persona. I mean, especially a professional athlete. I mean, imagine, like they say, people, astronauts, once they've gone to the moon, it's like, how the fuck, how do you top going to the moon, right? So these guys come back and they've got, what do they aspire for? I mean, what are they? What's their,
but so it's all, and like this, the whole belief thing, right? It's switching your perspective. So now that I've done this thing that's so amazing, like now I have time to do these other things, to find out what else lights me up, or to help other people achieve their dreams, or anything, right? So I've done this amazing thing, and now not, oh, it's over. Now what? It's like, great. What comes next? Now I have this time, I have this experience. Like I've had this amazing feeling of going to the moon. What an incredible experience. What can I do with that? Like, where do I go from here? And it doesn't have to be down. It's just how you switch it. And one of the pieces that I do with people is, so first you establish a pattern, right? Behavioral, emotional. What's not working for you? I'm anxious. I procrastinate. I'm depressed. I drink too much. I people please. I love toxic men. Right, whatever it is. And once you do that, then you start to look underneath, okay, well, what are the beliefs that contribute to this pattern? Right? So, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not deserving. And that's why it's a pattern, because we have these situations in our life, right? Our parents treat us this certain way, and then we go out and we find other people that continue to treat us this certain way. It's a pattern. We see a relationship not work. We see our family struggle with money, and then we continue to struggle with money. It's these beliefs we form that continue these patterns. And so at the end of the session, after you eliminate however many beliefs, you get that it becomes very real. You say, do you create your beliefs? Yes, absolutely. Do your beliefs create your life? Yes. Well, if you create the beliefs that create your life, what does that make you? And people go, the creator? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, typically we live like who we are our beliefs and the thoughts and emotions and behaviors that result from those beliefs, right?
yeah.
But you just eliminated a belief about yourself, right? You said, I'm not good enough. And you don't believe that anymore. Are you still here? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, you can't just be your beliefs because if you were, you'd be gone. We think that that's our identity. But if that was, you eliminate those beliefs, you're still here. There's still a you, right? There had to be an I before there could be an I'm not good enough. There had to be an interpreter before someone could interpret that event to mean I'm not good enough. And so you kind of just take someone that through this process and they get into this space, and you call it the creator space, where you realize
How do you get people to be honest with themselves? How do you get them to be true in seriously taking a look at what it is? I mean, sometimes it's easier for people on the outside go, dude, I know exactly what's, but we don't always admit that to themselves. So of course, like they say, the first thing is admitting that, hey, here's what it is. How do you how do you help people
well, because the
to
people
identify it?
that come to me are ready to change. Because if they're not ready to change, they're not going to call me.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, I mean, it's true. It's true, but people go into something all the time. People go, I'm going to start working out, and they get there and they don't. People go see a therapist and then they don't play all out. I mean, people go see someone like you, and maybe they're not ready. So can you get someone
So
ready? Can you bring
there's so
them to
many,
that?
I don't think you can make somebody ready, but I think that a lot of the things that we do or we don't do are beliefs, right? So procrastination is a huge pattern that clients come to me with. If you have the belief, I'm not good enough, nothing I do is good enough, mistakes and failures are bad. If I make a mistake, I'll be rejected. If I disappoint people, they won't like me, right? What makes me good enough is being perfect. How likely are you to start your project?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you get rid of those beliefs, they're no longer there. What's stopping you now?
Yeah.
But if you could, yeah, you can. And what makes it so you can is getting rid of the stuff that's keeping you stuck. And the really neat thing about this work is when you eliminate the beliefs, there's no integration. There's no tricks or tips or tools to remember. Your life just freaking changes totally organically, right? You just if you believe what I have to say isn't important, right? What I want doesn't matter. I'm not good enough. I'm not deserving. And you get rid of those beliefs and someone says something to you, all of a sudden you're going to speak up for yourself. You don't have to learn how to speak up for yourself. You don't need to say affirmations. You don't have to put sticky notes on your refrigerator, right? Like just it just changes because the things that have held you back are no longer there. And a lot of the time, and this gets back to where you said, are people ready? People talk themselves out of their beliefs. They're like, oh, I've worked on that. I know that I'm good enough because X, Y, and Z, and this and that. And I'm like, yeah, but if you have to talk yourself out of being not good enough, then you have that belief. Because if you didn't have the belief, you would have to talk yourself out of it. Right? You don't need to say an affirmation for something that you believe. There's no point. It's redundant.
Yeah.
So sometimes it can be tricky to get people to realize that like, yes, they've done a lot of work on that thing, but on some level it's still there. And when you eliminate the belief, you no longer have to talk yourself out of it. You can take all that energy, all that time, and all that mental space and put it towards anything else you want.
Does your history of everything that you've been through, does that help you be able to call bullshit on people and say, listen, I get where you are. I get what you're going through. I understand all this. So because of that, I'm going to help you get from here to there. Um, because you're your worst enemy right now, right? Which most of us, we are usually our worst enemy.
Sure. I guess so. I think I can call bullshit on people because they contradict themselves or because they're talking themselves into something, because the process is very straightforward and there's not really much room for bullshit. Once you establish the pattern and you find the beliefs, there's just not a lot of wiggle room.
Yeah.
And the way that the times that I do call bullshit on someone is they're like, "Oh, I don't do that," or "I don't, that's not true." Or I'm like, "Well, if you don't believe this, how come you can't do this?" And then they're like, oh, yeah.
Is there a common, I mean, common we all just kind of have that hold us back? It just seems like although we're all different, we've had our own experiences, we've experienced our own thing, we've gone down different rabbit holes. But is there something that you see like is the commonality that just holds us back?
The most common belief is I'm not good enough. 95% of my first sessions are I'm not good enough.
That's a hard one to overcome. I mean, that could come from so many places. I mean, that could come from childhood, that can come from your parents saying that, an abusive husband, a different relationship, struggles in work,
So
bankruptcies. I
here's
mean,
the
that
thing.
can come from a lot of places.
So most of our beliefs, there can be big traumas, right? But 95% of our beliefs come from our childhood. We're 4, 5, 6 years old. We walk around saying, why? 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 Right? And
Yeah.
we don't have the mental capacity to go, why? Oh, because my dad's an alcoholic. Why? Because my dad's working so hard to try and feed and clothe us that he's not here. Oh, my mom's depressed. My mom doesn't know how to parent because nobody taught her. My mom's socially inept or emotionally, like she doesn't have any emotional intelligence. She's not, my no one ever loved my mom, so my mom doesn't know how to love me. It's got nothing to do with me, but we don't. We go, oh, it's me. There's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough. There's something wrong with me. I'm not lovable. I'm not deserving. We don't go, oh, my parents are terrible with time management. My parents had too many kids. My dad's got anger issues. You know, we don't say, oh, my parents are criticizing me because they think I have so much potential and they want me to do better. You go, oh, it's because I'm not good enough, right? So when you go back and you find the source and you give that source other interpretations, yeah, it could have meant you're not good enough. Absolutely. What else could it have meant? Could
Yeah.
have my dad didn't go to parenting school. Could have been my dad didn't feel good enough and he was living through my achievements. So he was projecting that stuff on me, right? It could have been a million things. Maybe he didn't think I was good enough, but he was wrong. Right? Maybe he didn't think that I was good enough, but that doesn't mean anyone else would. Maybe in that house with those unrealistic expectations, I wasn't good enough, but that doesn't mean I'm not good enough anywhere. Maybe as a child I wasn't, right? And you come up with just a million other ways to describe those events. And you realize that what you saw as the truth was just one possible interpretation. And that's the first step of the process. And there's a few more. And then at some point, there's this like literal shift. I mean, sometimes you can see it energetically. Like people are just like, they look different. Their shoulders drop. They sit up straighter. Their smile, whatever. I have a client that laughs every time she just starts. Great. I love her. But there is literally this shift, and there's an energetic shift. And when you go back out into life, you are vibrating at a different frequency. Like you're attracting different energies, and you took off the glasses that say, I'm not good enough. Because when you have that belief, you look for examples everywhere. That's all you do is you, oh, there's another example. Oh, I got fired. See, I'm not good enough. Oh, I
Yeah.
messed up dinner. See, I'm not good enough. See, this person, whatever, right? And when you eliminate that belief, all of a sudden you're able to see those things differently and
Do you
things show up differently.
do you have to hit bottom
No,
before you start reaching out and wanting to get better?
no, absolutely not. I think you need to get to a point where you decide, I don't want to live like this anymore, right? Like, what if I could? What if I could be happier? What if I could stop spending all my energy thinking about eating, right? Emotional eating. What if I could spend all my energy stop worrying about what people think of me? What if I could stop spending all my energy on pleasing other people so I could finally stop and ask myself what I want? Right? What if I could parent different? What if I could show up in my relationships different? What if I could stop being angry? What if I could anything? Like, what are you doing that you don't want to do anymore? What do you want to do that you're not doing? And if you want it bad enough, you can change.
So how do you expose people to that? How do you get that mind shift?
I mean, it's like through the process, you mean?
Yeah. Yeah, through your process. How do you take someone who comes to you guys and like, listen, I suck. and everything about me sucks, and I'm just done. I don't want to live like this anymore. Or- And you take them through your process. You take them through your coaching, your teaching, your method. What how do you start? Where do you start changing this mindset? How do you get them to think
It's
differently?
just literally eliminating the beliefs. That's what we do.
Mhm.
And yeah, and as you eliminate more beliefs, like I said before, everything just changes more and more until the pattern stops. Right? I
Yeah.
had a client who was so depressed. He hadn't worked in years. He was super heavy, super overweight, just like didn't even brush his teeth. He just done. And we started working and we started eliminating beliefs about self-esteem beliefs and about money and about work and about his worth and about all these things. And slowly, what do you know? He got a job. And what do you know? He joined the gym. And what do you know? He started being social and right. And it's like, it just works. You get rid of the things stopping you, and there's nothing stopping you. So you start, moving forward. If you believe I'm not important, what I want doesn't matter, you're not going to go after what you want. You're just not going to.
Yeah. And it really is just that one step. Like you said, it's like, dude, instead of eating 6 bags of Cheetos, eat 5 today, and tomorrow eat 4. I mean, start that process of you can make these incremental changes. You're not going to go from 800 pounds to 300 pounds and a fit body in a day, right? It took you a long time to get fucked up. You got to take time to unravel that, right? And is part of your process helping them mentally just unravel that stuff?
No, like people think that change is hard and change takes a really long time.
Mhm.
And that's not necessarily true. I had a client and she just was stuck. She was procrastinating so hard. She had a tattoo business and she got to the point where she was so overwhelmed she couldn't look at her phone. Friends would text her, clients would text her, and she just like would put her phone down. And I was like, "Well, would you get on social media?" And she was like, "I would stare at the wall." It was like I just couldn't do anything. I couldn't order ink. I couldn't order needles. Like I just was so overwhelmed. I just couldn't do anything. Like I was just procrastinating so hard. We got rid of the belief I'm not good enough. She calls the next week and I'm like, "How was your week?" And she was like, "Oh my God, I posted on social media. I got back to everybody. I did this, I did that. She's this and that, this and this and this." So I called her the other day and I asked her for a testimonial and I was like, "What's going on? Like, how are you?" And she was like, "I opened a new tattoo shop. I started a community wellness center. I started this business. I had this other business move into this other place that I had renovated so that I could." And I was just like, "Are you kidding me?" She was like unstoppable. And it was one belief, it was 1 hour of her life. Now, not everyone has that experience,
Yeah.
right? Um, but again, like I had one client and we would do 5 beliefs a session, and she just had so much trauma. There was so much to work on. And every time she would come back and I was like, "Oh, well, how's this pattern? It's the people pleasing." And she was like, "Are you kidding?" She was like, "I did this week for myself and I did this and I went here and my roommate I've been living with for so long, I kicked him out because I was just done with his shit." And I was like, "Oh, who are you?"
That's awesome. So, I mean, just by getting them to believe more in themselves, you're able to get them to release the person they want to be, or help them change who they are, help them change their mindset, move out of these patterns that have just been stopping them.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Wow.
And it's
I think, that we get caught up in affirmations and meditations and all these things that we believe will get us there. But if you just sit there and write goals and do manifestations, but don't do any action, all that stuff doesn't mean anything, right? I mean, there has to be action to what you're trying to get people to do.
yeah, yeah. And it's so cool because it's across the board. The changes aren't just like when I started working on myself and excuse me, my parenting changed. right? Like it was just like every little thing changed. And for so long I'd been like, I want to get out of the restaurant industry. I want to get out of the restaurant, but I didn't see a way. I didn't see an exit strategy, right? Nothing changed, but my perception changed, and all of a sudden there was an exit strategy, right? So much of life is our perception, right? Like it's how we see things. And when we can switch how we see things by changing our beliefs, it's just doors open up that we didn't even know existed or that didn't think we could walk through. And change is so possible. And just because, people are like, oh, I've had this belief for so long, it's so deeply ingrained. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like my grandmother was doing this shit till she died. She loved working on herself. She was in her 90s, in her 90s, having sessions. She was just like, I lived with this for 90 years. I don't want to live with it for one more day. Like she was such a legend, you know?
Mm, yeah. Did you, when you decided to make the change, you said, I'm done doing all this shit. Did you go back to the family and get into the program and work the method, or did you just were so ingrained in it from when you were a kid, it was already natural for you to start practicing and teaching?
No, I went through all the trainings and yeah. I worked with my mom, I worked with my sister. There's another facilitator that I really like. I've worked with her a lot. Um, Actually we still trade sessions every week.
Hmm.
Get off the phone
And
with her.
your mom's real active, right? She's out there doing it.
Oh yeah, she's been doing this for 35 years. She's on podcasts, she has parenting workshops. She still runs the business. The really bittersweet thing is that when I found my way back to all this work, my dad had passed.
Yeah.
And that's that's always been, kind of tough. Um, because, there's all these processes that he created that I didn't even know existed. And one of my favorite ones to do with people is this stimulus process, right? So there's an emotion and a trigger. So every time somebody criticizes me, I get angry. Every time somebody yells at me, I feel fear. Every time I see a dog, I feel fear, right? It's just there's this thing that happens and I feel this emotion. And in 5 minutes, I swear to God, you can go back and find the trigger as a child, right? And you realize that what caused the emotion was not the trigger itself, it was the meaning you gave to it, right? So the meaning wasn't your dad yelling at you, the meaning was my dad's going to hurt me, right? I'm going to get hit, or I'm not, your survival's threatened. As a child, your dad's yelling at you, it feels like your survival's threatened. So that's what caused the fear, not the yelling.
Hmm.
And to make that distinction real, you go, okay, imagine, we go back in time and your dad yelled at you, but then he tickled you afterwards, right? Instead of hitting you. And he would yell and he'd be like, if you don't do your homework, I'm going to tickle you. And he'd chase you around the house yelling at you, right? And if he had yelled at you as he chased you around tickling you, would you have felt fear? And you're like, well, no. And you're like, well, if you hadn't felt fear then, would you feel fear today? And it breaks that connection.
Hmm.
And it's a really fast, powerful, neat process, right? I didn't even know that existed when my dad was alive. I never got to like ask him about it or talk to him about it. And now I learn these things and I learn how to do them and I see how profound they are and how much they help me and my clients. And I'm just like, gosh, like I just really kind of missed out on that one.
Yeah, yeah. But again, you had to find your own path. You had to find your own way here, which like, and by doing that, it just changed the way you are and how you treat the people that you work with. How did your dad come across this method? How did your dad start to put the ethical method together?
So my dad spent a lot of his life really depressed, a really hard childhood. And there was that piece. And then he kept going and he was a consultant and he was going into businesses and he would say, this is what you need to do to fix your problems. And they would be like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then they wouldn't do it. And he was like, well, why? Like, why is this? Why is this? And this was before beliefs were like a thing, right? It's
Hmm.
35 years ago. Why is it that we give people information and they don't do anything? right? Like, why am I depressed? And I know all the reasons why I shouldn't be depressed and all these things. I can tell myself all these stories and logic and this and that, but nothing changes. And he's like, it's got to be our beliefs. And he was sitting on a plane one day coming back from a business trip, and he just like kind of created this process and he took himself through it. He's like, well, what else could it mean that this happened? And what if I go back in time and I give these events a different interpretation? And I'm like, oh my gosh, the feeling really shifts. Well, if the feeling can shift, right? And he just kind of did it. And at the end, he was like, oh, I don't have this belief anymore. And then back then it would take 2 hours to, eliminate one belief. So it's progressed, but the fundamentals are the same. And then through that, he started working with people. And then, he'd be like, oh, but the stimulus is still there, right? We got rid of all these beliefs and this, but there's still this just kind of inherent fear that's triggered, when someone criticizes us. What's that? And then he like came up with this other process. Um, and it was cool because he really lived it. Like he stopped giving meaning to things. And when he died, he was like, it's like the fucking Buddha, man. He was like stage 4 cancer and he was comforting me. He was like, gosh, Blake, like it's gotta be so hard for you to watch your dad die and know that I'm not gonna be here. And he was literally comforting me, dying of stage 4 cancer. The doctors were like, he's in denial. And he was like, I'm not in denial. It just like it doesn't. So another thing that I teach clients, and this is really fun, the Lefkoe Institute does a workshop on this called the occurring course. And the reason we have emotions is not because of events, it's because of the meaning that we give to the events, right? A lot of that meaning is from beliefs. So if you eliminate those beliefs, you stop giving that meaning. But you can do this every day, right? So you're driving down the street and somebody cuts you off and you're like, you get pissed off. He's an asshole. He doesn't care about me, right? And you're angry and you go home and you're still angry and you're still thinking about that asshole and how he was driving. You're like, okay, what meaning did I give to it? Right. Well, I gave it the meaning that he's an asshole and he doesn't care about anyone. So I'm angry. Right. You're like, okay, well, what else could it mean? Could mean he was in a rush. Could mean he has a terrible headache. Could mean his girlfriend just dumped him. Could mean his dog died. Could mean he's, I don't know, just went to the eye doctor and they dilated his eyes and he couldn't see well. We have no idea why he was doing that. I don't know for sure that he doesn't care about me or he doesn't respect me. I don't know that. I made that up.
Mm.
And when I give that event a different meaning, or I realize the meaning I gave that event is just in my head, it's not out there in the world, that anger dissolves. You go into the store, you see a friend, they don't say hi to you. You go, oh, she doesn't like me. She's mad at me. I did something wrong. She's pissed off. And we start to feel upset. You go, stop. All I see, the event is she didn't say hi to me. That's the event. The meaning is she's mad at me. The meaning is I did something wrong. The meaning is she doesn't like me. What else could it mean? Could mean she has a headache. Could mean her dog died. Could mean she's fighting with her boyfriend. Could mean she saw me and I was scowling and she thought I was in a bad mood. So she thought she'd give me space. Could be she didn't see me. Could mean she is mad at me, but that doesn't mean anything about me. I don't know anything for sure. Maybe she's mad at me because she's projecting, because she's jealous, because she's got her own bullshit and it's got nothing to do with me. And as you switch that meaning, the feeling goes away. And when my dad was, older before he died, he literally stopped giving meaning to things that would cause a negative reaction. Some meanings are good, right? I would call and he would get excited. Oh, Blake's calling, right? Like he would get all stoked. So, so you don't have to do it all the time, but events don't have inherent meaning, right? Rain, is it good? Is it bad? You got to ask the bride on the day of her wedding, is rain good? No, rain's the worst thing ever. You ask the farmer who's got crops that need to be watered, there's nothing better than rain.
Yeah.
So, so it's the meaning, and that's such a helpful tool that we teach people to just start dissolving their.
We give power to things that don't deserve it. We give power to things to control us that don't deserve the power or don't even deserve to be acknowledged, let alone given power, but they give them power to make us feel a certain way, and it doesn't even make any sense. It's like you said, a friend in the grocery store, she might not have even seen you. She might have thought you had a bad day. Maybe she was having a bad day, but we give it that power to somehow give us an emotion. It's like, why do we do that? It's
Yeah.
just so bizarre that we give it that power. But what was it like when you were a kid with this stuff? Did you look at this stuff and just go, "This is such woo-woo bullshit," or were you engaged in it? Did you know what your folks were doing when you were a kid, or what would you feel to
I
think of it when you were a
didn't,
kid?
I knew that it was real because like my mom worked out of the house. And so like I would see her clients, and like you'd see a shift. You'd see a shift and you'd hear stories at the dinner table about what people were doing and what they were doing now. And my dad, this guy sponsored a research study, and he went to like a halfway house. And they had one group that they just did whatever they do with people in a halfway house, and then the other half worked with my dad, and then they followed them, right? And the people that worked with my dad never went back to prison. They, left, they got jobs, they like just total different story, right? So I was surrounded by this information, by seeing the things. I saw my dad change. He was always working on himself. I saw my mom change. Um, there were a few things in my life. I don't really even remember this, but they said when I was 6 years old, we went to a carnival, and this woman was walking past and basically like put her cigarette out on my arm and then looked at me and was like, "Watch where you're going," and it was like, 5, 6 years old, crying, and we left. And then whatever, a few months later, another thing came to town and we went, and I didn't want to go. And I was completely freaked out. And they were like, "Well, what's going on? And normally you love this thing. We go every year." And I was like, "I'm scared of crowds." And my dad was like, "Oh, and he got to the belief, well, crowds are dangerous." That was the belief I had formed by this woman putting her cigarette out. 5, 6 years old, he just kind of took me through the process. Well, could be crowds are dangerous. What else could it mean? Right? Could mean this thing, could mean that, could mean this, could mean that. So can you see that you never actually saw crowds are dangerous? You saw this event happen at a certain place in a certain, right? And I was like, "Oh, yeah, no, I never saw that." It's like, and what does it mean that someone put a cigarette out on your arm? Like, yeah, it hurt, consequences, but what does it mean? What do I now know about all crowds everywhere forever? And it's like, it doesn't mean anything. and and it was like kind of a simplified version of the process, but the belief went away, and we went to the carnival, and I've never had a fear of crowds ever since. It's like crowds are like nothing for me. I don't even remember it happening, so I knew that it worked. I just kind of didn't want to do it. It was like, I don't know what to compare it to. It's like your parents owning like a Chinese restaurant. Like all you do is eat Chinese food. All you do is eat Chinese food. And then you grow up and you're just like, they're like, "What do you want to eat?" And you're like, "Anything else."
It's tough, especially when you don't want to follow your family into the family business a lot of times. Like I work with my son. We own a real estate company, and he didn't at first. He wanted to do other stuff, and then when his mom got sick with cancer, he left college to kind of help in the business, and then he took to it. He loved it. Now he loves it, and 10 years later, he's in the business. But initially, that's not what he wanted to do. He's the last thing he wanted to do is work with his dad. That's
Sure.
the last thing he wanted to do.
Yeah.
But how that makes me think of something about how young of people can you work with this? Can you work with children in this, or I mean, how young could you work to kind of start helping people shift?
So I've done some like simplified stuff with my son. He's 11. We started a few years ago. Like we were in the car and we were running a little bit late, and he got really upset, and he was like, "Oh, I always make everyone late for everything." And I was like, "Yeah, that's one possible interpretation. What else could it mean?" I was like, "Well, I sometimes make people late." And I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "And you don't really ever make your dad late because your dad always leaves super early." And he was like, "Oh." And I was like, "So you make some people late?" And I was like, "Maybe as a child, while you're learning time management skills, you make people late, but that doesn't mean that you always will." And he's like, "Oh, yeah." And I was like, and maybe as long as you're not wearing a watch, you make people late for things. But maybe if you had a watch and you had a better sense of time, you wouldn't make people late for things. And he's like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, cool. So if there's all these other ways to explain these events, is what you said, I always make everyone late for everything. Is that the truth? And he was like, no, it's not. That's it. Like there was a shift. That was enough. So we've done some things like that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Number one, it's awesome that you would give him that time to walk him through that and just saying, yeah, shit, man, we're always late, but to give him the time to walk him through that, but also that he was willing to accept, which a lot of kids aren't, from their, parents, some sort of teaching, some sort of thought processes that might be helpful to them because kids just like to blow off their parents. So it's super cool that you and your son were able to walk through that. I mean, that's going to help him in so many different areas down the road if he can then do that with himself, right? Drop that back, something happens in school, something happens somewhere, and now he can rewalk that back to himself from that moment that you gave on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really fortunate. We're super close. We have a really good relationship.
Yeah, you think he's going to follow you in the family business?
I don't think so. I mean, I have no idea. I think he loves baseball. He's 11, he wants to like
Who knows
ride his
what he's going to do, right?
dogs and play baseball and just play video games and be a boy. I'm like, yeah, get after it.
That's what he's supposed to be doing.
Absolutely.
Right,
Yeah.
that's what he's supposed to be doing. That's awesome. So what's next for you? What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do with this? You gonna keep going down this? You love what you're doing with this now, or is there some other horizons for you to conquer?
I love working with people. I'm definitely going to keep doing that. Um, the interesting thing about it is it's not like therapy. So people come for 1, 2, 5, 10 sessions. They handle their shit. Go back and forth. And then I do things like podcasts to
Yeah,
tell people about what I do to, get new clients because your clients don't stay long. It's not a great business model because it fucking works.
yeah, yeah. And no,
Uh,
I think I think what you said is pretty awesome on that as far as the thing with traditional therapy or whatever, you get someone locked in, they come every Thursday, sit on your couch, pay $150, and they stay there for 10 years, and nothing ever happens. Nothing ever freaking happens. It's a bitch session for them, or the therapist keeps them there, but it's like a divorce attorney, you want to extend this thing out as long as you can. You don't want to settle it, right? So it's awesome that you're able to do something and help someone quickly with the intention of helping them quickly. I don't want you hanging around forever. I want you to get better and get the hell out of here, right? I
I had
want
I
you
had a
better.
I had a client the other day and she was like, I just can't believe how fast you moved. She was like, you could have spent that whole first session just listening to my childhood and listening to my problems. And she was like, and you did nothing but be like, okay, I got it. That's enough info. Let's move on. So like, I am like, how many beliefs can we get done a session? I move so fast. I do like I want people to have their freedom. Like I want them to live amazing lives. I want them to come back and be like, this was phenomenal. I'm good. Thank you. This was great.
Now, and this is something that they could take home, they could take with them throughout life and every day, and they could step back and say, all right, now I remember what Blake said about this, or walked me through that, or exposed me to this. And so I could take this moment and fix myself, right?
Yeah, I mean, some people are able to do the process on themselves. It's hard. I can't. I definitely can't. Um, but you eliminate enough beliefs that the things that were in your way are no longer in the way, right? Things are showing up differently. It's like every time you eliminate a belief, it's like you take a cage off yourself. It's like, I don't have to move, but I can. I have all
Mhm.
this space and freedom, right? So like you move all these cages and you have all these possibilities. What you choose to do with them, it's up to you. Um, but you also have the little tricks and tools like, the no meaning but if something comes up, like I've had clients come back. I had a client send me an email and she was like, I'm getting so triggered by my children and I'm angry. I'm angry. And I was like, great. And we worked on it. And now she's not angry anymore. Clients will reach back out and say, oh, this thing came up.
Mhm.
Thing that wasn't an issue before, it's now an issue, and they can work through it and, go back. So, yeah, so what's next? So I will keep working with clients. I love it. It's amazing. I do it on Zoom, so I can work with clients all over the world, which is just so fun. I'm starting to work more with the Lefkoe Institute. I'm teaching some of the trainings that they give, which is really fun, teaching people how to do the process. And we're starting to look at putting together some some packages, some online things, make it affordable for anybody. So kind of like recorded sessions that you go through, and there's all kinds of fun stuff in the works.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Now, is it mostly just your mom right now doing this, or are there other trainers? Now that you mention it, are there other people that work in the industry that do what you do?
Yeah. Yeah, they do a Lefkoe Method training 1, 2, and 3, and then a certification program every year. And so there are, I mean, I have like my sister does the process. She has her own kind of coaching thing. She works with business people. She's really successful, but she uses this process as well. And then there's people that do it like within the Lefkoe Institute, but there's lots of people that have been trained that, are out there doing it with their friends and family or in their coaching practices. And it's a pretty
Well, there's
phenomenal.
a lot of them. I mean, what did I see? 150,000 of them or something like that. I mean, there's 12,000. There's a lot of people that have gone through the institute and been helped. That's pretty
Oh,
amazing.
I'm talking about like people that have taken the trainings, not
Oh,
just
okay, okay. To become trainers to train the
yeah,
method like you are. Okay,
yeah. There's a
okay.
lot of people that have gone through the process. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The
I think
last
it's so awesome that you get to live in North Shore and be ready to hit the surf anytime you want or just get outside and your son gets to live in such a beautiful place. And then you can train anybody anywhere in the world just from your what you're doing right now. I mean, isn't that the most freaking awesome thing ever?
yeah, you were like, what if you could? I was like, I do.
You're already a what if you coulder. You're a
I
what if you coulder already.
I have such amazing life. I make my own schedule and I'm like, okay, there's not going to be wind, and then we'll go tow foil. We'll like use the jet ski and we'll tow into waves. And if it's wind, I work in the morning and I keep the windy part of the day open, and then we go do like wing foiling in the afternoon. And yeah, we like flat days, we take the ski out and go swim with dolphins, and it's
Oh,
like a
that's awesome. I love it. I love it. Well, you've been so gracious with your time. We flew through a freaking hour. It just flew by. So I always end my podcast with one last question, if I may.
yeah,
And I always like to say if there's one thing that you would like to leave people with, it could be about the method, it could be about your life, it could be about
yeah.
windsurfing, it could be about anything in life. There's something that, from your heart that you would like to leave our audience with.
Sure.
What would that last thought be? What would that one thought be?
Life doesn't have to look like anything. Your life can look like whatever you want it to. People think life should be a certain way. And it's just not true.
I want you to repeat that one more time, please, if you don't mind. Life.
Doesn't have to look like anything. Doesn't have to be any way. Your life can be whatever you want it to. Can look like whatever you want it to.
I
People
love it.
have to
Life
work
doesn't
40
have to
hours
look
a
like
week. They
anything.
have to
Yeah.
do this. They have to be in this kind of relationship. No, no.
Yeah.
What works for you? Find people that, if you want to be in a certain kind of relationship, find someone that wants to be in that kind of relationship with you and make it happen.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah. Life does not have to look that certain way. I just think, I think that's awesome.
Thank you. And
I
also, I'm not on social media, which I know is not a great business choice, but I just it is.
But it's a good mental choice.
It really is. But if you want to know more, you're interested, if you have questions, if you have doubts, if you want to know how I could help you, anything at all, Blake Lefkoe, BLAKE, as in Frank, KOE, BlakeLefkoe.com, or email me, BlakeLefkoe@gmail. If you're interested in any of the courses, Lefkoe Institute, so lots of information on there. And on my website, there's a link on the top and the bottom to just book a free call and just chat. Ask me whatever you want. Tell me, what you got going on. Tell you how I can help. I have a sliding scale. I really want to work with everybody and make this available because it's amazing.
I love it. I love it. So we'll make sure I'm sure you with the import form stuff, or we'll just get that information for you. We'll definitely put that on the podcast so people will be able to just click, find out how to reach you. It'll be all right there. Your website, your email about you, it'll all be on there so that people could
Yeah.
reach out and go, "Hey, I want to be fixed and I want Blake to help me."
Awesome.
Well,
Fantastic.
you've been awesome. I appreciate this so much. I mean, just time just flies. There's so many things that we could cover, but there's only so much time and there's only so much wind, and we got to get out there.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. All right, Blake, thank you so much. I will see you soon. Thank you, everybody. See ya. Thanks again for joining us on another episode of What If You Could podcast. Please subscribe, like, share, and give us any feedback. We'd love to hear it. And remember, if you can dream it, you can do it. See you next time.